welcome back to Friday Film Reviews, where I talk about all the films I've watched over the past week. This will be a much shorter video than last week, which was a 40-minute epic, and thanks to the people who did watch that, by the way. I was surprised that it actually got quite a few views and some good comments and stuff, so thank you for bearing with me through that very long video. But this week I've watched nowhere near as many films, so they should fly by in comparison, so let's just get straight on with it. Partridge was the first film I watched. It's a short film I watched on YouTube. I listened to a podcast called They Talk Movies, Don't They? And they were talking about it with someone else who they knew on this website that I go on. I won't go into too much detail. And I think his name is Neil Wood. I might be wrong. but I'll leave a link to the video, to the film Partridge, and you can check it out right now after you finish watching this video, or you can just stop this video and watch it right now. I highly recommend you do. It's called Partridge. Again, it's about 11 minutes long, I think, and it's about a guy who grows up playing the Super Nintendo, you know, the old kind of, well, not the oldest, but you know, one of the older consoles, and how through the years and the advent of the next generation and the HD consoles, stuff like that, he stops playing those games, and then how he kind of is drawn back to them. And it's kind of a silent film. There's no dialogue. It's just the visuals, the music, and some sound design. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really simple but really effective. Really enjoyed it as a gamer and as a gaming fan, particularly as a Super Nintendo gamer as a kid. It really struck home for me. Loved it. So I highly recommend you check it out. And yeah, that's it really. Just really liked it. And the ending was a little bit moving as well. I thought it was a nice little touch. So I highly recommend Partridge. So the next film I watched was a film I talked about last week, Kings of Summer. I made my fiancée Connie sit through it because I really wanted her to see it. She really didn't want to see it. She thought it sounded boring, but I convinced her to watch it, to give it a shot, and she ended up really liking it. And yeah, nothing more to add on that really. It wasn't like a revelatory second watch. It was just as good as it was the first time I saw it, and still one of my favourites of the year. The next film was The Purge. Another film from this year, and if you did watch the last week, you'll know that I'm on a weird kind of mission to watch as many films in 2013 as I can. The Purge was about, I think it's set maybe like 5, 6, 7 years in the future, and basically the government has ruled that every year for 12 hours martial law is declared. Basically, there are no laws. You can do whatever you want. There'll be no repercussions for 12 hours. And the idea is that it purges, you know, humanity. Basically, it gets rid of the dead wood, gets rid of the weaker people, and it also lets people who would normally be committing crimes on a daily, weekly, monthly basis let go of all their anger and hatred in this 12-hour period known as the Purge. It's quite a scary idea, really, and Ethan Hawke plays a guy who has built this kind of security system that a lot of people are using. It's like all the rage at the moment, and he's got it as well. He lives in a really posh neighbourhood, and he's got a family. His wife's played by Lena Headey, who I'm a really big fan of. Really loved her in the Sarah Connor Chronicles, and then movies like Dread, and of course Game of Thrones. And she was okay in this. She wasn't really that well. I would say actually towards the end, her character kind of had a bit more to do in the film, I guess. They have a teenage daughter and a teenage son, and the film takes place during that 12-hour period of the Purge, and it's tense, it's interesting. I love the concept, but the film didn't quite live up to what I thought it would be. I don't know. I'd say overall, it's worth giving it a watch, I think, but it wasn't amazing. The ending was so-so. You know, it was interesting, but I feel like it had a lot more potential. The next one is Curse of Chucky. We're on a bit of a horror kick. Again, released this year. It was, I think, the 5th or 6th film in the Child's Play series, or the Chucky series, and all the main players are back. The guy who wrote and directed this film, I believe, was a writer on all of the films, or was at least involved, you know, very heavily in the Chucky franchise. I'm not a big fan of the Chucky films. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen some of them and bits of others, but I do like them, but I'm not like a die-hard fan by any means. There's a lot of fan service in this, particularly towards the ending. This about as many endings as Return of the King, or conceivable endings. It just kept going on and on. It's quite a short film though, although I believe it's like the longest of the whole series. But it's quite low budget, straight to DVD. And the main character of it, apart from Chucky of course, is a woman in a wheelchair, and she's the daughter of Brad Dourif, who does the voice of Chucky, and also portrays his human counterpart, who also appears in this movie. And they used some digital effects, I think, to soften his face so that he would look younger, and then in other shots they didn't, so that was a kind of, I just felt like if you're going to do it. But there's quite a few mistakes, well, not mistakes in this, but things that you just thought, oh come on, you know. There's this really cool shot actually where someone falls off something, and you know, the shot of them falling was like, oh, that's really cool. And then it cuts to them on the floor, and they've landed in a completely different position and not quite where they were going. And then there's something else that was in the. It's just, I think when you have a big kind of beat like that in the film, you know, you really should focus on, right, if she's falling that way and we've got the shot of that, then really she should be landing here. You know, they paid no attention to that, and I thought that was a really dumb move. And the movie is very simple. It takes place in this big house. Chucky gets sent there, and then it's a bit more of a horror than previous films, like Bride of Chucky, and not as kind of tongue-in-cheek and funny. There are some funny moments to it, I guess. But again, a lot of fan service towards the end. If you're a Chucky fan, I highly recommend you watch it, because the ending, or a couple of the endings, are really fun for Chucky fans, I think. Overall, it was just okay. And then I watched a film that I'm really looking forward to. I wanted to see it in the cinema when it came out, but I moved over here and it was never going to show over here because it's not that big of a movie, but it is Alan Partridge, Alpha Papa, which I've been waiting for so many years. I mean, I'd heard the plot line probably in the mid-2000s. You know, they were trying to make an Alan Partridge movie about Alan kind of at a radio station, kind of under siege, and it'd be a bit like Die Hard in the BBC or something, and it sounded great. And I remember at the time, actually, he just starred in Around the World in 80 Days, and he was becoming more of a film star, and there was a worry that he'd kind of get taken off by that and never come back to Alan Partridge. Of course, he's come back to Alan Partridge many times, on the stage, on the screen, in a book form. You know, he's done so much with Alan Partridge recently. So the film felt like a logical next step, and I loved it. I thought it was really funny. Lived up to my expectations of what Alan Partridge movie should have been. I feel like it wasn't like... I think the hype was so big that it didn't fully live up to my expectations, but it was everything it could have been, if you know what I mean. It was really funny. There's some great lines in it. Connie watched it with me, and she actually found it quite funny as well. But it was good to see some of the old characters again back, like Michael and Lynn and what's his name, Dave from the radio station. He's quite funny in this, actually. And we had what's his name? I think Pat Farrell was the character's name, played by an Irish actor who I've seen in a lot of stuff. He's one of those people you see his face and you know you've seen him in loads of films, but you can't quite put your finger on which ones he's in. I've forgotten the actor's name even, but Pat Farrell is kind of an older DJ who's got more of an older audience on the radio station that Alan's working in, which is now changing its name from Radio Norwich or something to Shape, to be more like young and hip and with the, you know, the new generation. And so this new company comes in to take over the station, and they're deciding whether or not they should sack Pat Farrell. Alan, kind of being a friend of Pat's, he waltzes into their conference meeting and is trying to fight for Pat, for them to not give him the can. And you're thinking, this is a bit weird. It's not like Alan to actually stick up for someone else or do anything that doesn't, you know, isn't for his benefit. And then he notices on the table there's a little sheet of paper where they've got like all the people who work at the station. It's like Pat Farrell, Alan Partridge, which one to sack. And he suddenly changes all tune, and he's like, well, you really should get rid of Pat. And then he just puts it in bold on this flip chart. He's like, just sack Pat. And so Pat gets the sack, and he ends up holding the radio station hostage, and Alan's got to kind of come in with the police. And you know, if you know Alan Partridge, you've probably seen the film already or know about the plot anyway. But it was done really well, and there were some really funny moments. Some of my favourite moments were when he runs through a wall and he says, "Ayatollah," and Armitage Shanks Redemption. Such an odd, obscure joke that I think maybe only men will get. I'm not quite sure, but quite a very obscure reference. But I found it really funny. But yeah, it's just really, really fun as an Alan Partridge fan to see that movie. Next, The Prestige, Christopher Nolan's film that he did between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Heard a lot about this for many years, just never got around to watching it, and we watched on YouTube a top 10 movies that you should see twice, and I think it was mentioned in the honourable mentions. And so we decided to watch it. You know, Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, these two magicians. I think it's like turn of the century kind of era, and it's all revolving around this one trick that Christian Bale's character has done, and Hugh Jackman's character becomes obsessed with it. And there's other things towards the story. There's a very dark kind of introduction to the whole story, and it's told in a very different kind of non-linear way, which I really enjoyed. And Christopher Nolan is really a big user of that, telling stories out of sequence, outside of the Dark Knight trilogy anyway, and he does it very well. He weaves it so intricately, but it's quite easy to follow at the same time. We have David Bowie playing Nikolai Tesla, which is really weird but really cool at the same time. And I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Really wish I'd watched it sooner. There were some great performances in the film, some great kind of trickery and stuff, and this is kind of what I would have wanted from Now You See Me, that film that I reviewed last week, or talked about last week. Less of the CGI stuff and more of like trickery on camera that actually looks real and is done practically and stuff. Michael Caine was brilliant in it as well. Overall, Prestige is just fantastic. Really, really enjoyed it, and can't wait to watch it again and probably pick up the Blu-ray at some point. Next is First Love. This is a French-Canadian film, quite obscure, that came out this year. And it's about this young kid, I think he's about 14, 15, and he goes away for the summer with his mum and his dad. And kind of just it's just like a kind of island kind of camp, you know. It's just with a little kind of not a caravan, but just like a small home. I mean, there's the way to describe it. It's just completely gone straight over my head now. But it's like just a holiday kind of camp kind of thing that they own this little house, and there's a house across the way, and his dad knows the woman there, and he knew her when he was much younger, and she has a young daughter now who's, I think, 17, 18. And so this young boy, he kind of has this his first love with this girl, and he kind of really has a crush on her, and she kind of takes a liking to him, but she's older, and then there's other boys involved, and it's really about his relationship with her, and then what happens after that, and it gets a bit kind of fucked up. But it's really quite a simple film. It's shot well. I love the acting. You could say the kid is either brilliant or really disengaged, but he doesn't say much in the film. But I think he carried that really well. And it wasn't great. I was expecting a bit more, to be honest. Just because it was Friday. It's quite racist almost to say that I was expecting more because it's French. I don't know if it's racist, or stereotypical. I don't know. But French movies are always really great and artsy and stuff, and it was really good, but it fell short of the mark of what I was expecting. But I did really enjoy it, and I'd recommend people to watch it. It was an interesting look at a bit of human drama and growing up, but not fantastic. Then went to see Catching Fire in the cinema, and we'll do a full review of that. So, well, we've already filmed it actually, so I won't go into too much detail. But I really loved Catching Fire. A lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of fun. There's fun to be had in Catching Fire, but it's mainly quite dark and quite political at the same time, and it's so much better than the first film. I thought the acting was better, I thought the direction was a lot better, and the story was a lot better. There was a lot more going on in the first film. You know, it's just like, okay, Katniss, played by Jennifer Lawrence, goes into this Hunger Games, which she's got to survive. She can't die. That's it, basically. This one, it's like she's got her, like, you know, she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders. She's got to juggle the fact that she's killed people, and there's so much guilt that goes along with that. And also the fact that she is the hope of the world, basically. And so there's a lot of more intricate and more important themes and tones going on in the film as opposed to the first one. I really liked the first one, but I thought this one was just so much better. And the ending was really badass. I loved the ending because it was not your typical ending, and I appreciate that. And then just two documentaries that I watched to round this off. The Making of the Fellowship of the Ring, which was released in 2006. It was made by Costa Boats, who is a filmmaker who was on set for the Lord of the Rings trilogy for, I think his how long he worked on the whole kind of you know, behind the scenes filming was about 5 years all in all. He was there from the beginning, he was there at the end, and they use a lot of his footage in the extended edition DVDs. But the stuff that he made and he edited for his documentaries they didn't use, and then in 2006 they bundled them together in a limited edition DVD set. They didn't really ask him, you know, they didn't ask for his input in how they were put together, and he kind of felt like he was shortchanged. He's been quite vocal about it in the past, but you can look that up if you want. But it shows a much more raw and realistic look into the Lord of the Rings films. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but there's a few tense moments in the documentary which they didn't include in the extended edition. And the extended edition documentaries are fantastic, I love them, but they are quite glossy, and everything was great, we loved everyone, you know. they do go into some of the bad, you know, the troubles in production, but they don't go into more of the, like there's clips of Ian McKellen, for instance, doing this line in the film, and the camera's filming him, you know, as he's doing it, and his acting wasn't very great in the scene. Peter Jackson comes up and he goes, "That was great, everything was good, the timing was great, but everything but the acting." And Ian McKellen goes, "What?" He said, "Well, everything was good except the acting." So these little tense moments and stuff like that that didn't make it onto the extended edition. So it's quite interesting if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings films to see more of stuff like that. And also it really interviews the stars, the filmmakers, and then just the people at the very bottom who were doing really seemingly trivial things but are very important to the overall production. It's a great kind of fly on the wall look. And there's 2 other ones for the other 2 films, but I just watched the first one, so really good. And finally, How Video Games Changed the World, a documentary that came out on Channel 4. I think it was last week. That's when I heard about it anyway. It just talks about the history of video games from pretty much the start of when video games started becoming popular, like Pong and that kind of thing. And it's kind of framed around their list of the 25 most influential games, which, you know, has all the usual stuff like Pac-Man, Mario. Tear around influential. That was really random. Yeah, like Pac-Man, Mario Brothers, Tetris, Space Invaders. I was going to say Space Raiders. If anyone in the UK will get that reference. The list was okay, and the interviewees were quite varied, but it was kind of odd. It was an interesting watch. I prefer the archival footage and stuff like that and the history of games, but their number one, or the last on the list of influential games, was a bit of a cop-out, and I think they were trying to be a bit too clever with it, a bit too on the nose, but you know, it is what it is. I love that they included The Last of Us as one of the 25 games as a case of video games being, you know, art, and being like, you know, their comparison was it was like a HBO drama box set kind of thing. And I agree with that, because The Last of Us is fantastic. It was presented by Charlie Brooker, who he presented it well, but I just felt like it was a bit too kind of nonchalant, and kind of, it felt like he was trying too hard. I don't know, I'm not quite a big fan of his presenting style, but there are a lot of other presenters I would have rather it not have been in this program, so it was bearable, at least. I enjoyed it a lot though. Interesting if you're a fan of video games, but not quite as comprehensive. It just felt like it was skating over a lot. You know, Sonic wasn't mentioned whatsoever, which, again, fair enough, I guess, but there was a lot to cover. And then they went through the whole, you know, Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty, and, you know, is this bad for kids? And, you know, it's been done, really. We've done this, is what I really think of that. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Quite a varied list. Went on a bit longer than I thought, actually, so sorry about that. But there it is. Friday film reviews for this week. Thank you for watching.
He says he's really cool, but I think he's a tool. Even though I'm sure he's a quite nice guy, really. He's a quite nice guy, really.